Hola, this is Profesora Kate with a brief online class video. Today we're scheduled to start un nuevo capítulo, Lección 11. Let's start with a few quick anuncios in Spanglish. First, I'm sorry that I had to cancel class today because I'm homesick. I hope you got the message in time. We're going to go ahead and start the new capítulo, Lección 11. You should already have your calendar and packet from the other day. If you didn't yet get a chance to turn in your pink participation form from Lección 10, don't worry, you can do that next Tuesday. As we start a new chapter, just a reminder to continue to review the alphabet and the sound of each letter so that you'll be able to pronounce new vocabulary words, such as the new ones for this chapter. Hopefully you had a chance already to work with the vocabulary tutorials that I put up on the Panorama Super site for you. You can practice your alphabet skills and pronouncing the new words, and also work on your recall of this new vocabulary. If you do have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. Let's get started. Objetivos del día. Introducción, lección 11. Práctica. Ortografía y vocabulario nuevo. Mandatos informales. Por y para. Let's start with a quick introduction to lección 11. With a little bit of conversación. On page 341 in your book, you can look at the picture and look at the questions. Go ahead and pause the video and make an effort to answer each of the questions in a complete sentence for practice so that you can get started with this new theme, La Tecnología, in Lección 11. So go ahead and pause the video now. Try to answer each of the questions listed here on the screen with a complete sentence. And when you're done, go ahead and start the video again and move on to the next slide. Now let's take a look at the communicative goals for Lección 11. In this chapter, you will learn how to talk about using technology and electronics, how to use common expressions on the telephone, and how to talk about car trouble. If you look at the list of grammar that we're going to study in this chapter, we'll be covering familiar commands, por and para, reciprocal reflexives, stressed possessive adjectives, and pronouns. Let's start out with ortografía, just a quick spelling lesson about acentos escritos. Sometimes written accents are used to distinguish two words that are otherwise spelled the same. So for example, the list on the screen. C with an accent, C without an accent. C with an accent means yes, and C without an accent means if. El with an accent means he, and el without an accent means the. Me with an accent means me, and me without an accent means my. Tu with an accent means you, and tu without an accent means your. So you can see that in some cases the accent is what literally distinguishes two words that would otherwise be spelled the same. Let's move on now to the new vocabulario for Lección 11. Hopefully, as I said, you've already had a chance to do the tutorials that were posted on the Super site and practice your recall of that new vocabulary. Now we're going to practice it a little bit more in contexto. So if you look at the picture here on the screen and the list of questions on the side, go ahead and pause the video. See if you can answer each of those questions with a complete sentence using some of the new vocabulary that we are studying in Lección 11. Pause the video now, and when you've had a chance to answer each of the questions, then start the video again and move to the next slide. Here we will continue to practice the new vocabulario en contexto by using these sentences on the screen here and completing them using vocabulary from Lección 11. So take a look at each sentence listed and then try to complete each sentence with additional vocabulary words. Go ahead and pause the video, and once you've had a chance to finish using practicing the vocabulary in context, then hit start again and move to the next slide. Our next topic for today is mandatos informales, informal commands. So what is a command, actually? A command is when we tell someone to do something or not to do something. With informal commands, or two commands, we're telling someone like a friend, someone that we would normally address as tú, telling that person to do something, which would be an affirmative command, or not to do something, which would be a negative command. In Spanish, the affirmative and negative tú commands actually use completely different verb forms and have a different placement of any pronouns like direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns, or reflexive pronouns. So let's take a look at each of these types of commands separately. First, the affirmative tú commands. This would be when you're telling someone, again, that you would normally address as to do something. When you do this, the verb form that you use is the third person singular of the regular present tense, which would be like the L form. So if the verb is bailar, the form would be baila. If the verb is comer, the form would be come. There are, of course, a few irregular forms listed here on the screen, 8 of them. These are some of the more commonly used verbs that have developed an irregular form for their affirmative tú commands. If you need to use any pronouns, reflexive, direct object, or indirect object, the pronouns would be attached to the end of the command. And you would need to watch out for accents. Whenever a pronoun is attached to an affirmative command that has 2 or more syllables, an accent mark is added to maintain the original stress of the verb. And you can look in the book for more details on that. Negative tú commands. Again, the verb form is very different. You're going to use basically the yo form of the regular present tense, but with opposite tú endings. So basically, if you take the yo form of any verb, like comer, and the yo form would be como, and then you would take off the o and put on the opposite tú ending, so it would be comas. No comas would be the negative tú command. Now keep in mind, some of the yo forms in the regular present tense are irregular because they have stem changes, or they're just irregular yo form verbs like salgo, pongo, hago, tengo. You're still going to use that irregular yo form, take off the o, and put on the opposite tú ending. So if it's an ER-IR verb, you're going to add AS, and if it's an AR verb, you're going to add ES, right? Again, there are some irregular forms listed here on the screen, the list there, and then also any verb that ends in car, gar, zar is going to have a spelling change, the C to QU, G to GU, or Z to C, like we saw with the preterite as well. And then the position of pronouns with these negative commands is going to be before the verb, not attached. So very, very different formation than the affirmative tú commands. Actually, the verb forms that you're using for these negative tú commands are subjunctive verb forms. The mysterious subjunctive that we will be studying very, very soon. This is your first look at it, just a glimpse, with these negative tú commands. So let's just try a few examples. If you look here on the screen, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can form the two commands, affirmative and negative, for these 3 verbs. Go ahead and pause the video now, and then hit play when you've had a chance to try this. So the first one is done for you, corre being the affirmative command, and no corras being the negative command. For the second one, the affirmative command would be llena, and the negative command would be no llenes. Now, if you wanted to replace el tanque with a direct object pronoun, lo, then you could make your affirmative command llénalo with an accent, and your negative command no lo llenes. In the third example, salir, in the affirmative, you could say, this one is irregular, right? So sal, ahora. And in the negative, no salgas, because the O form would be salgo, take off the O and add the opposite tú ending. Our last theme for today is por or para. So the first thing that you'll need to do in order to learn por y para is to look in the book at the specific uses that are outlined for each one. And you'll want to memorize the list of uses for por and the list of uses for para. That's your first step. Then once you've done that, just like we did with ser and estar, you want to do some practice and see if you can figure out which one would be needed in a given context. So if you look at these few sentences here on the screen, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out which one you think would go in each of these sentences. Then when you're done, go ahead and start the video again. Alright, so the first one is done for us. The second one, necesitas un navegador GPS para encontrar la casa de Luis. And number 3, entraron por la puerta. And number 4, quiero un pasaje para Buenos Aires. And in number 5, para arrancar el carro, necesito la llave. And again, through their super site homework exercises and things like that, you'll have plenty of opportunities to practice identifying the uses of por and para. We do have a cliffhanger for today. Bonus points towards the quiz, and this of course would be due before class on Tuesday. You'll need to go ahead and write it on paper, but we're having a por and para acronym contest. So if you think about the list of uses for por and para in your book, and take the first letter of each of the uses, you can sort of decide which word you want to use as your letter, but sort of the main word that represents each of the uses, and pull out those letters and go ahead and make an acronym out of them. If you're not sure how to make an acronym, or if you have any questions about this, don't hesitate to email me. But if you'd like to participate in the contest for bonus points, you will need to bring your acronyms, probably really 2 acronyms, one for por and one for para. Just write them out. They can be acronyms in English or Spanish. The sillier the better, usually, for memory's sake. And you can just turn those in before class on Tuesday for bonus points. Hasta el martes. Continue to follow the Yellow Brick Road, the calendar for Lección 11. And as always, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. Hasta luego.